Hello, and welcome to another episode of It's a History podcast. I'm your host, Madison, and this week we are going to be looking at the history of the wedding dress. I myself actually got married last week, so I've been doing quite a bit of looking at wedding dresses over these past few months. When it comes to weddings and wedding dresses, the first image that pops up in your head is probably a bride wearing a white dress or close enough to white. Now, of course, we have our one-offs with some people getting married in pink, red, or black, but for the vast majority of Western weddings, the bride is in white. But did you know that the white wedding dress, or even the wedding dress itself, is a relatively recent addition to our marriage tradition? This tradition of the bride wearing white can be attributed to Queen Victoria and her choice to wear white on her wedding day, when she married Prince Albert. Victoria and Albert were adored by the public, with many viewing their relationship as an ideal to look up to. And not to mention that Queen Victoria was quite the influential character. I mean, there is literally a whole era that is named for her, the Victorian era. She also popularized black as a mourning color after Prince Albert's death. There are many things that can be attributed to Victoria. Prior to Victoria's choice to wear white on her wedding day, it wasn't uncommon for brides to wear dresses that contained many colors, with red being one of the more popular colors to wear to one's wedding. It was even common for brides of all class status to simply wear whatever their best dress was. In Queen Victoria's time, white had traditionally been a color that was reserved for girls who were being presented at court. But on her wedding day in 1840, Victoria walked down the aisle in a big white dress, which had really just been one of her favorite colors to wear. And with the amount of wealth she had, what she wanted, she got. The choice to wear what was her favorite color would cement white wedding dresses as the norm up to the present day. Her dress was made of cream satin with lace on the neck and sleeves, and the silhouette with its slim waist and full crinoline petticoat is still the preferred dress of the West. During Queen Victoria's time, one's wedding dress was not a once-in-a-lifetime wear. Instead, it would be expected that the garment be worn multiple times. Queen Victoria even wore her wedding dress multiple times, having repurposed it to suit other events. If you had listened to the episode I did on Victorian-era laundry, then you'll know that laundering 19th century gowns was no easy task, let alone a white gown. Having a white dress that you wore regularly would have been an absolute pain to maintain. Fun wedding dress fact, Queen Victoria was not the first notable European bride to wear white for her wedding day. The English princess Philippa wore a white tunic to her wedding to the Scandinavian king Eric in 1406. And everyone's favorite Scottish queen, Mary Queen of Scots, wore white to her 1558 wedding to the Prince of France, even though at the time white was considered a mourning color in France. Even Princess Charlotte wore white in 1816 when she married Prince Leopold in 1816. White was not a required color, but rather it was a color that was kept in rotation. If anything, the color white was more a symbol of wealth and status than a symbol of purity that would come later. In last week's episode, I touched on the Babylonian marriage market where young girls would be sold off to the highest bidder. This comes from Herodotus' histories, and in 1875, a British artist named Edwin Long painted his interpretation of the scene. And in this interpretation, he had all the brides-to-be in garments of various shades of white or cream. This color scheme was not reminiscent of the historical scene. Herodotus did not describe what the girls were wearing in his story. Instead, this color scheme is more a representation of the time period that Edwin Long lived in. The Victorians had a very strong idea of virginity and purity, something that wasn't present, at least in the way the Victorians understood it, throughout history. As time went on and more brides were choosing white as their wedding dress color, the color started to signify something else. It started to signify the bride's purity and innocence, as well as continuing to be a show of wealth. And it should be important to note that white looked best in their black and white wedding photos of the time. Looks like wedding pictures are a tradition that transcends time. Of course, it should be noted that this initial change would have been predominantly within the upper classes of society. If you were in the lower middle class or below, you were probably still wearing a dress you already owned, or a dress that could be worn again after your wedding. It wouldn't really be until after World War II that white wedding dresses would really hit the mainstream. The time period after World War II was marked by a more prosperous economy and an increase in single-use clothing items. The rise of the white wedding dress amongst the populace was also further ignited by the rise of Hollywood and the increasing ease in which photos of celebrity weddings would be spread. Grace Kelly wore a white gown in her 1956 wedding, and when Prince Charles and Princess Diana married, her ivory silk taffeta gown was shown on television screens worldwide, 750 million people watched the prince and princess get married on live TV. Even when we look at some of the more influential dresses of the last 20 years, Princess Kate Middleton's wedding dress and Bella's dress from Twilight come to mind. I was an avid say yes to the dress watcher as a teen, and I remember watching many brides go into their consultations looking for something reminiscent of these two gowns. And with that, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you learned something new about wedding dresses. Sources for today's episode include an article from Vogue titled Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About the White Wedding Dress by Maud Bass-Kruger, and a JSTOR article titled The Natural History of the Wedding Dress by Summer Brennan. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a review. If you want to email me any questions, comments, or topic ideas, you can email me at itsahistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can also find me over on Instagram and Threads at It's a History Podcast. I'm pretty active on both. Thank you again, and I hope to have you in the next one.